Here with Matt Redman on the Made It in Music podcast. Man, thank you so much for being here with us.
Pleasure.
It's always an honor for me to have conversations with people whose music I've been personally so influenced by. So, man, 10,000 Reasons, I mean, way back, Here I Am to Worship. Like, we were just talking about that in our...
That one's not me.
Okay, well...
That's my friend Tim Hughes.
I thought you said you were a part of it with Tim Hughes.
Well, I'm the guy who nearly stopped that one getting heard by the world.
How so?
He played it to me.
Okay.
We were in church together.
Gotcha.
And he played it to me. I was the first person ever to hear it.
Gotcha.
I think my exact words were something like, yeah, it's quite good. It's not as good as some of your others. So on the strength of that, he put it away for 6 months. And then 6 months later, he's with our pastor. And the pastor says, have you got any new songs? And he said, I got this little thing. The pastor is like, that's the most amazing worship song. Why didn't you play that to me sooner? He's like, Matt said it wasn't very good. So I got in trouble. And then, but I often get attributed that song. And usually I just accept it.
Yeah.
But seeing as on a podcast, that's hard for me.
Well, I guess you had led it and done it on so many.
No, I did it a lot, yeah.
So many different
and
things.
I had a song called Heart of Worship that they get confused for each other.
Well, Heart of Worship, another just incredible. So, man, thank you for taking the time. And what I love with this podcast is the full backstory. We always get to really dive in. So
the real truth.
The real truth. So let's go all the way back for you. What was the first dollar that you made in music?
Well, it would have been £1, of course, not $1.
Yeah. Okay.
And I have no idea. I mean, it probably would have been leading in some youth group somewhere, and they were kind enough to give me a book token afterwards. Spend in the bookshop or something. And then when it came to songs, I was writing and leading songs, and then starting to get them published, I guess, from around like 19 or something. I think. So sometime around then. The interesting thing for me was when I went into all this, I didn't know it could be a job. I loved worship music. I loved seeing what was happening at our church through it. That's why I started playing some guitar so I could play these songs at home. I had no concept that this could actually be something you could do. You could even support your family. When I started working for the church, I was on like this crazy small salary that they could scrape together. And I actually thought in my mind, I'll never be able to get married or have kids because what I've chosen to do in life is not going to support that. Wow. I remember thinking like I might be giving that up to do this. But God's a lot kinder and wiser than me. And he's been, it's been good.
So obviously, grew up UK, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
Got into it through church.
Yeah.
And so the journey between you making that first pound of whatever you were doing, leading worship.
Yeah.
And actually
Pound's
being
worth more than $1 as well.
It is. The exchange rate is it's up and down. I have a Swedish wife, so we very much follow that.
Yeah, fantastic.
But what was the journey between that and actually being able to like do this like full time and jump in?
Yeah, I mean, I was serving at my church, and then they offered me a job, and it was like a year thing at first, and then it turned into full time, and it was actually a lovely place to learn because I was in a church which really encouraged young people to move into their gifting. I remember being like 15 and leading there, and I remember thinking like, this is kind of a cool arrangement because I'm so young that if it goes good, I get encouraged, and if it goes bad, everyone blames the person who put me in that role. So there was this kind of golden moment there, but that didn't last for long, obviously. And then I was leading worship like 15 times a week. And because we would run these leaders retreats, and we had all sorts of stuff happening. And then we church planted, so I was leading in a few different congregations. We'd travel to Europe at the weekends, like a place like Holland and Germany. So I had an opportunity there to grow pretty quick. And then what happened was the songwriting came from doing all these youth events everywhere and realizing we don't have the right vocabulary for these group of people. Like I love the songs that we're leading, but whenever I do these things with all these teens, it feels like musically, lyrically, some of what we've got's a little alien to them, and it's not helping them speak to God in the most natural way. So that's really where the songwriting came from. It was.
So you had all these songs that were just like not language that you would.
Yeah, I think they were. They were very valid in every way. I'm definitely not dissing them. It's just when we did that stuff with the teens, like we had this thing called Soul Survivor. It was a youth conference. We'd have a few thousand teenagers there. And it felt like musically, what we had was a little disengaged from what was going on culturally and what would feel natural to them musically. And then it felt like also even lyrically, like there might be other ways of saying this stuff that's going to interpret better to them. So the songwriting came partly as a necessity, trying to fill the gap. Although I must say, before I was doing that, I was writing songs for me to process what I was going through with God. I had a real rocky childhood. My dad took his own life when he was 7. Then Mum remarried. We had some really tough times with her new husband didn't treat us good and all sorts of stuff. And the music became like a safe place for me. And, I think how I would say it now is I figured out that when you go to the throne room of God through music, you learn pretty fast that place is not only a place of reverence, but it's a place of refuge. And it felt like my safe place. And so I started writing these songs, and they were really just for me to start with. Like I needed to write them to talk to God. So that's where I started. Then the youth stuff started happening. Before I knew it, I was full-time. I suddenly had a salary. And went forward from there.
It's amazing. And man, another song I kind of skipped over, but Blessed Be Your Name. I mean, like, obviously that I always felt like that song came from just such a real place of authenticity of somebody that had actually walked through those seasons. So did some of that come from obviously your story and what you went through as a kid? And
I think that for me and my wife Beth, our story's definitely in there. You have the same thing, don't you? Where how long it take that write that song, and some of them you can trace way back to even your childhood, and I've been hearing a lot about the importance of trusting God in every season of the soul, and also a lot of thinking around the fact that it's biblically relevant to have lament. Like the Psalms, Eugene Peterson estimates about 70% of the actual content of the Psalms is lament based or crying out to God, or there's some angst in the mix alongside the praise. And so it's biblically relevant to talk to God like that, but also it's culturally relevant because that's where so many people are at. And it was interesting to me thinking there's not many songs that actually help us do that in our repertoire. And then 9/11 hit, and we were on sabbatical in California. And I was traveling around churches trying to learn, and the speakers were doing an awesome job of talking into all these preachers. But I was thinking, where are the songs? And so we wrote Blessed Be Your Name shortly after that. So I think that probably what happened was there's a lot of our life and our history and our testimony in the song, but the trigger point for the song was probably the 9/11 stuff.
Wow. So writing songs from a place of what do people actually need to hear?
Yeah, I think you're always, when you write songs for the church, you can't take that lightly. Like it says in the New Testament, no one should presume to be a teacher. Because it's kind of a big thing to carry. And I think if you're writing songs that are going to teach something about God, you can't take that too lightly. You have to get to grips with, okay, where are the gaps? What aren't we talking about that we should be in terms of the Christian life or the seasons of the soul or the nature and character of God or the aspects of his ways or the story of God, and we're always going to have gaps. I mean, a lady called Martha J. Dawn, she said, you're never going to be able to write the whole truth, but you must never write untruth. So that's the first thing. Don't write anything that's not true about God. But then the second thing is to try and get to grips with as much as you can, just the full spectrum, because you look through some of those old hymn books, and even the contents pages put us to shame. I mean, they're writing about every imaginable thing. They're telling you God's Trinitarian. They're telling you Jesus came, and they're talking about how he lived on this 33 years on earth. We hardly ever mention those in our worship songs. He's talking about his death. We mention that, but the resurrection, the ascension, the fact he's going to come back again. And some of these things we've done really well with. The centrality of the cross, I think we've done really good with. But maybe too good. Because does the resurrection get enough of a mention? Does the ascension of Christ? Does this his return? So it's not something you can take lightly, and you're always knowing you're not really going to get there.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah. Man, that's really good, and I do want to talk more about that in a bit as far as songwriting for the church specifically, but obviously the journey of you just diving in and writing those songs that people need to hear and songs that you needed to hear has taken you some pretty incredible places.
Yeah.
One of which wasn't there a thing where your music went to space or something like that? Like, what was the story there?
Yeah. We were working on a book, me and Louie Giglio, and it was called Indescribable, and really about the glory of God in the universe, and what we're living in such a privileged age, like the Hubble Space Telescope, beyond the distorting effects of the Earth's atmosphere, where we can see these amazing works of God that no one's ever seen before in history, especially in the way we're seeing them. And just realizing there's more out there than we ever could conceive, and it's more beautiful and more ordered than we ever thought it was. They say there's more stars in the known universe than there are grains of sand on all the world's beaches and deserts. Wow. And so it's an amazing time we're living in. And so we started looking into that as a way of pointing people towards God and especially leading them in worship.
Yeah.
We were like Hubble Space Telescope's one of the best worship leaders.
Yeah.
And then what happened was we got to know a few people, a couple of astronauts, and one of them very kindly chose a song of mine called Shine as his wake-up music on the International Space Station, and then another flew one of the CDs up there.
Wow.
Brought it back. So that was very kind of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that.
That's incredible.
I have a great story of that CD, actually.
Yeah.
Because my daughter, who must have been like 8 or something, she said, can I take the CD into school to show my class? Because it had a little certificate and the NAS thing, and I hadn't framed it all yet. I was like, yeah, take it, but be careful. So she comes back, brings the certificate back and all the other bits, but the CD's it's gone missing. I was like, what is it? She goes, I lost it. I'm like, mate, that's been in space. Like, you can't lose it. 2 weeks later, and I'm actually like, I'm not really like I love possession sort of person, but I was pretty fond of that because I love the space stuff and all that.
Yeah.
2 weeks later, a lady comes up to me in the school car lot and she says, hey, is this yours? I found one of your CDs on the floor in the car lot by my car. And I've had it in my CD player the last 2 weeks playing it. And I was like, yeah, I'll give you another one. Can I have that one back? Because that's been in space. So I got it back.
That's incredible.
It was awesome.
So, I mean, what from here? Is the next goal Mars then? I mean, are you
Let's do it. It might take a while. It is pretty funny, isn't it? The days we're living in.
It's crazy. I mean, you even just, and we've talked a lot about the business of the music in here, and in contracts now, it's in the universe. Like, that's the territory.
That's amazing, isn't it?
And they're just covering bases just in case.
Just in case.
Because not only if, but when.
Yeah, just in case.
Yeah. So, do you have any, man, I just,
Well, the Old Testament says we've got to love the foreigner and the alien. So.
Yeah, that is very true. I mean, you've obviously, I can imagine, outlived many of your goals and things that you probably thought you would do.
I didn't really have any. I don't know if that makes me weird, or I'm not. The nature of the way I got into this, if I wasn't to look from a spiritual outlook, I'd say I stumbled into it.
Yeah.
Obviously, it was God's plan and His hand and His favor. But I was just this little kid writing songs. I wasn't a musician even. I only learnt the guitar because I liked the dynamic of what happened in worship through music. And I've been the worst musician in every band I've been in for the last 30 years. And I didn't really go into it thinking, I'm going to record and then I'd like to have this thing happen or that thing. I think maybe the nature of how I got into it is maybe why I didn't have some of that stuff. So all the things that have come along, I mean, along the way, have just been amazing blessings and I've enjoyed them. I'm trying to handle those entrustments well.
Yeah.
I mean, even some of the... just the places we've got to lead or record, like Capitol and records and studios and Abbey Road, and then Wembley Stadium in England, the Royal Albert Hall. Some of these things, I'm like, man, this is just the most amazing adventure. Thank you, Lord, for trusting me with this.
Yeah.
But I didn't really have a big goal in mind, or I don't know if that makes me.
No,
weird.
it's good. It's great to hear, and honestly, it's a bit of a common thread between people we have on the show. Is there's a surprising amount of people that will say that same thing, that they're just, I have no idea how I landed here, but
So and actually, I have other friends who have more of a vision, and listen, I'm building, and I'm going to get to, and I think God uses that as well. He just uses us in our different ways.
Yeah,
and there's strengths and weaknesses to both approaches, right? I guess mine could be that I could be a little too laid back sometimes, maybe.
So how have you approached, because obviously it's an industry, it's a business, how have you approached this balance of commerciality with, worship music, with your art?
Yeah. Just by keeping the main things. So for me, if the commercial thing or ever became too central, that's alarming to me. Or if I can't make every decision through the filter of the music industry, because I think if I did that, I don't think I'd be handling my call very well. So I celebrate those things. I think they're God-given things. Like, I'm been associated with a brilliant record company for like 20 years, and the things that they've done and the places they've put songs that I couldn't have, and the way they've worked with translations or different genres, I mean, that's amazing. But I think it has to stay in this way of like the main thing, say the main thing. So that's like the add-on. The main thing's like my heart opening up before God in the way I used to. You look at the life of King David. Towards the end of his life, he says to Joab, the commander of the armies, go out and count all the fighting men in our nation. And he's basically, Joab says, like, no, that's an offensive thing to do before the Lord. And he says, no, go and do it. And it's like he wants to know their strength. There seems to be a lack of dependence. There seems to be a pride element. And you compare that to the heart of the small shepherd boy who goes out and fights Goliath with a sling and stones and staff in his hand. You can see a massive amount of dependence. You can see a massive amount of humility. And you can see that the only thing driving this kid is not his own safety. It's not his own reputation. It's not his own career. It's just the zeal for God, the passion for who God is. And that for me is interesting, because I think, like, okay, I used to be this little kid doing it. No money changed hands. I did it purely for passion and love for God. And I love that God's trusted me with things. I've got to go to amazing places, countries, venues, meet cool people. We've sold some records along the way. Songs have flown out. Can I be in that place and handle all that and still have that heart of that little shepherd boy who's still in it for the glory of God? And that's like a challenge daily, to have to keep the main thing. And my belief, honestly, is that if you do that, if you seek his kingdom first and his righteousness, all the other stuff is going to get handed to you or take care of itself. Just keep the main thing.
It's good. So good. Well, we're going to jump into our full circle 5, but I do want to hear about 10,000 Reasons.
Yeah.
I'm sure you've told the story of this, but I haven't heard it from your mouth. So what happened there? I mean, that was incredible. I had the chance to write with you and Jonas.
Yeah, we loved that.
Myron a couple days ago, and I know he was a part of that one as well.
Yeah, massive part, yeah. Well, we've been songwriting in a little village chapel where I lived in England, and we had this lovely little arrangement where we could have it as late as we wanted. So by then, we'd been there all day, since 10 a.m. It was 1:30 a.m. And I wanted to go home, and I was tired, and I knew I'd have to be up for kids in the morning. And he's like, hey, I've just got this one more little thing. It's just the beginning of a chorus melody. Wow. And I said to him, no, mate, let's do it another time. Yeah. And he's like, no, I really think... And he's not a pushy person, which you'll know for another day. Very so because he was being a little more strong than normal, I thought,
maybe there's something.
Better listen to this. Yeah. Break his little Swedish heart otherwise. So I was like, all right, mate. And as soon as he sung it out, I was like, hey, that's Bless the Lord. And we thought about writing a song around that.
Wow.
And we just had the most amazing, I don't know if it was an hour or something, but just this song was flowing out. Some of those verse lyrics came straight out. And then it was an interesting one because I didn't know if the song was finished. I loved it. There's no pre-chorus, there's no bridge. I thought this is, a sweet song, but is it finished? And also, there's nothing cool or progressive about the song. It almost offended the songwriter-y part of me of like, this song, were we trying hard enough?
Yeah.
It's not many chords and all this kind of thing. But because it's good being in a team, and Nathan Knuckles, who was producing the record, I nearly didn't play it to him. And I played it to him a couple of days before, and he's like, I don't care what we're dropping, that one's going on.
Wow.
And he's not usually a strong speaking guy either.
Wow.
So I was like, okay, listen to him. And it became the record title, and then it was interesting watching the song start flying around. And, some of the stories that came back from that song just knocked us off our feet, really. I think a lot of it's to do with that last verse.
Yeah.
We're talking about heaven. It's some of the most moving things. I mean, we had one story, these guys who were on death row in Bali for drug trafficking offences they committed 9 years before. They'd become Christians since, their lives radically transformed, and by all accounts they were transforming the lives of others there in the prison. But the authorities decided they still had to face their penalty. And as they were literally facing the firing squad, they were singing 10,000 Reasons. And it was, there's a lot of stuff in there. Number one, if you can face a firing squad and still be found with a song of worship on your lips, you can pretty much face anything in life. And, But it was amazing seeing this tiny little 4-chord song that's gone out, and it's even reached a prison in Bali. And so, it's been wonderful seeing all that.
Unbelievable. Well, man, that's heavy stuff. That's why you keep doing it, right?
Yeah, and to be honest, so we ended up with a couple of Grammys for that, so that was great. LA, I celebrate that moment, part of God's entrustment, awesome. The next morning I woke up and one of the first emails I read was from someone who said, hey, my uncle died this week, and there was 31 of us in the room, and he asked that the soundtrack to him leaving us and going to be with Jesus would be we sing this song over him.
Wow.
And I thought, isn't God so kind? Because some of the stories that come back keep it in perspective, and they remind you of why you're in it and what you do it for. And I'm super grateful for the Grammy thing, but it reminded me in that moment, that's not what I'm in it for, though.
Yeah.
That stuff's awesome. Lovely part of God's entrustment, but the real heartbeat of what we're doing here is for people like this.
Yeah, that's so good, man. So I do want to jump into the Full Circle 5. So do you have a favorite book or record that you most commonly recommend to people? A
book, I love The Treasury of David by Charles Spurgeon. It's like 3 volumes long, and he's just going through the Psalms, and some of it's like, I don't know what the heck you're talking about, but some of it is such the most beautiful, poetic, devotional insights into the Psalms. So I'd say maybe that for a book, especially if you're like a worship leader. It's a great source of probably even song inspiration in there. Music, I don't know. The records that have stayed with me a long time, Songs in the Key of Life, Stevie Wonder. I saw him do the whole thing live last year.
Wow.
He did like disc 1 before the break and then disc 2 after, and that was a treat. Just the melodic. It reminds me how important the melodic thing is.
That's good. Well, let's talk about failure a little bit, because obviously we've talked a lot about the successes. Yeah. But failure can turn into a lesson if it alters the way that you view things or changes your behavior on something. In that sense, I like to refer to it as sometimes we can have our favorite failure. Yeah. Do you have a favorite failure?
I'll tell you a funny story first, and then something more serious. Yeah. I was with Martin Smith from Delirious way back, and a few years ago we did a little tour of Europe together, and there was this moment towards the end where I was leading this big fast song, and my pick flew off, and I thought, oh, where's that gone? No idea. And then I noticed down the front, the people seem more excitable than normal. They just really, I was like, man, it's amazing. Like with this kind of wave of joy, they're all like laughing and smiling. I thought this is wonderful, kept leading. And then about a minute later, I look up on the big jumbo screen and the pic has somehow landed on my forehead. So I'm like, I've probably got one here. I'll show you what it's like. It's literally like this. I was leading worship and on the big jumbotron I had a pic on my head. So that was a pretty decent failure. The whole arena laughing at me and I'm the only one not in on the joke. And I tried to do it since, and it's pretty hard to get a pic to fly in the air and land on your forehead.
I would ask what you learned from that.
Pay attention when everyone's laughing at you.
Hang on,
like, is this what's going on here? On a more serious thing, I mentioned already at the beginning of this, like Tim Hughes' song, I moved much too fast past. But I've noticed I've done that a few too many times for it not to be an alarming thing. Like when Darlene Check's Shout to the Lord came out, I thought, that's a cool, nice song, but I don't know if it's my kind of vibe. And then before long, I saw it sweeping through the church, and of course I led it just as much as anyone and realised what an amazing vehicle it was for worship and what a lovely song it was. But that's happened to me, like with Heart of Worship, I wrote that and nearly never led it in worship. 10,000 Reasons, I told you.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting thing to me. It rang a little alarm bell when it happened with 10,000 Reasons, because I thought this has happened too many times now. And I realised some of it is this, I don't know if it's pride or if it's like it might be like a musical snobbishness or something. You know, like when you become a coffee snob and now you only drink this kind of, maybe it's that, like sometimes some of these beautiful God-soaked songs aren't getting through my filter system because I'm being a snob or something. So I've got to be really careful with that, not to write off something that actually could be really beautiful. So it's that's a growth thing, isn't it, as a writer, because your filters can't just be musical or lyrical.
Yeah, that's great advice. So before you dove in and before all this stuff, the Matt Redman of Blessed Be Your Name and 10,000 Reasons, was there anything that initially kind of held you back from jumping in, if you can transport your mind back in time there?
Jumping into doing this,
this whole thing,
in life?
full on, full time, taking the plunge, so to speak.
I mean, honestly, I didn't feel that equipped because I wasn't really a musician. But I had so many people around me encouraging me. I had a great youth pastor, a pastor, other people in my life speaking affirmation, telling me that this was God's call for me, that it got me through all that second guessing or not believing in myself that maybe I could do this thing. So I have to say kind of yes and no. And, as I've gone more into that, I actually realize, I need to become a better musician, but I realize my strength, the older you get, it's probably the same for you. The more you've done this, you realize where your strengths lie. And so I know, even as a songwriter, I've realized my strongest suit is lyrics. I get more lyrical ideas that, way more than I get melodic ideas. And so I tend to lean into the gifts of people who have real great melodic ideas. Like we already talked about Jonas. He's for sure one of them. And you're like celebrating each other's strengths, leaning into each other's strengths. And so I think the older you get, you do that. Yeah,
and you probably get more secure in them too,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, hopefully not in an arrogant way, but just for me, it's to the point, like we wrote the other day, I will come in with some melody, with the words, and I will usually say, I'm not precious at all about the melody. It's kind of helped me form the lyric. It's how I got to where I was. It's how I let the idea come through my heart and mind. Because I'll get in a room with Jonas, and because I could work 10 hours on the melody, and within 10 seconds he can beat it. so I've realized, like, okay, when I'm writing with him, go hard after the lyric, and just don't be inflexible about the melody, because he might develop it into something better.
So do you kind of, in a way, defer to whoever you're in the room with a little bit?
I mean, so And that happens anyway on a normal situation, but with people you've been writing with for years, like Chris Tomlin would be another one. We first wrote a song 2001, so 17 years. So you learn where each other's gifts are, and I like one of his gifts is this kind of universal sensibility where he seems to have a great grip on what's going to be really singable and relatable for like the average person. So you kind of lean into that. You think, I've got this melody, he prefers that one. Which one should we go with? Track record tells me he makes a good judgment call on this kind of thing.
Yeah, that's good. That's good wisdom. So what is something that's working for you right now?
Great question. Something that, from a technical songwriting perspective, I love more and more and lean more and more into this idea of inhale and exhale in a song. So you breathe in the wonders of who God is in the verses maybe, and then you breathe out your response to that in the chorus. I like songs to be a classroom and a chapel. So they teach you something about God or remind you of something, bring something into view, but then they're a chapel, so there's space for devotion, a space to reply or respond. And I think you look at a lot of worship songs and they're describing God in the verse, but they just keep on describing him in the chorus. And then you get to the bridge and we're still describing him. There's nothing wrong about that, but there's something really helpful sometimes about you describe him in the verse and then you move to devotion in the chorus. And you get this lovely kind of rhythm of inhale and exhale, breathing in, breathing out. And it's the pop song form is amazing for that. The hymn form's not good for that. You notice a lot of hymns are pure description. They're just telling you information about God, and they don't ever give you a chance to tell him what you think about that information. And I celebrate those hymns because they got so much amazing content in them. But I call it revelation and response. And it's like the form of songs that we seem to so often write, that verse-chorus structure, is such a brilliant way of adopting that rhythm.
So, last question, the full circle 5. If you woke up tomorrow and this whole music thing, your career sort of just fell apart, which I don't anticipate happening anytime soon. But if it happened and you still retained all the experiences and relationships and the years that you put in, and you had to start from square one, literally from zero, where would you start?
What do you mean, what else would I do? I mean...
Could do the same thing, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I love leading worship. I love songwriting. I'm sure that would be in the mix. If I wasn't doing music, I think I'd be to do something with words somewhere. Probably be writing, words for adverts or commercials or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that really interests me is the country songwriting thing. And the reason it does is because some of the very best lyric writing I've ever seen has been from some of those country writing teams. Some of the little twists and turns, or the little way they deliver the punchline, or the way they tell a story, but there's a little part at the end you weren't expecting.
Yeah.
There's a song called Temporary Home that Carrie Underwood sings, and I'm like, if I could ever write a song like that, I'd be a super happy man. It's just, it's like a parable, you know, it's like, you thought you were just hearing about people living in temporary situations in life, whether it be a fostered kid or all sorts of things, and you get to the end of the song and you realize, oh, we were hearing about earth and heaven and how we're just here temporarily, we're going to be with Jesus. It was amazing.
Well crafted.
Yes.
Is there anything that you're currently working on right now that you want to talk about?
Just a ton of songwriting, and I love that. And we've been doing we've got a little Europe tour coming up. Going to record a live video for a song called One Day, When We All Get to Heaven, which is on my last record, Glorious Song. And that was a fun treat. We got to record that at Capitol in LA and then do all the acoustic videos on the roof, looking over LA as the sun went down. It was pretty lovely.
Wow, that's awesome. Well, I'm sure people can find you on social media and website and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Well,
At Matt_Redman for Twitter, and at Matt Redman Music for Instagram and Facebook. No idea.
Very cool. We'll post all the links in our show notes as well. So, Fantastic. Matt, thank you so much for being here with us on the show.
Pleasure, man. It's great to chat.